Hello everyone and welcome to this video that I have put off for way too long. Scheduling conflicts and whatnot have not I've led it to be a lot harder to record, but it's here. We finally managed to get it in. So hello and welcome to my bottom 10 movies of 2023. For those of you that haven't seen the other videos, we'll throw up the rules for what can and cannot be included in this list. Um, and with one final, I'm sorry it took so long for this. Let's move on into my bottom 10 movies. So starting at number 10, I have the Barbie movie. This this movie was not good at all. Like I shouldn't say it wasn't good at all because it did have a couple points that I did grant it was good with, but the problem is that the bad parts of this movie tanked it so much further down the list. Like the feminist message in this movie was just way too aggressive, and the worst part was is that they even did have like a moment in there where they were like where they did briefly admit that like the mistreatment of men, or the Kens, was the whole reason that led to a bunch of things. But literally every single feminist that I know that I have tried to say that point to have literally told me to shut up and that I was watching the wrong movie. So it just this the movie, it tried to do something, failed horribly, and it just had a really bad message. Moving on to my number 9. Uh it's a very sad day with a very heavy head, heavy heart, that I have to say Dream Scenario is my number 9. Very sad to see a Nicolas Cage movie on the bottom 10. As anyone who has seen our other videos knows, we are big Nicolas Cage fans here on the Cinema Regulars channel, but this movie just was not up to snuff. It was aimless, and it didn't really go in a particular direction. It was just awkward for awkward's sake. Like, there's so many moments in the movie where it just made you feel uncomfortable just to make you feel uncomfortable. And the fact that it literally the whole movie was a metaphor, basically. Like there was nothing that needed to be, like, nothing in that movie needed to really be there. It was just a whole movie that was just like, "Hey, this is a thing that happens," and then just didn't elaborate on it whatsoever. It did not do good. The only good thing about the movie was Nick Cage's acting, but it just wasn't enough to save this awful movie. Moving on to my number 8, uh is The Exorcist Believer. This movie did not need to be made. It really didn't. It was horrible. It As a part of the Exorcist story, just wasn't good, like, at all. They couldn't pick a lane, and the worst part was they tried to make a movie about exorcism without trying to be Christian, which was just a horrible, horrible, horrible choice. Like, they literally tried to do this, like, two different religions at the same time throughout the movie, and they, like, didn't bring a priest in really at all. They tried to, but he was like, "Nah," but he's like, "No, I can't help you. It's not sanctioned." And they're like, "Oh, okay, we'll just do it ourselves." And it's like, no. It's not how that works. But there's just so much wrong with that movie, and that I could have a watch the video on it for more of the thoughts, because I could literally rant for hours about this movie. It was so bad. Uh, but it 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 just it should have never seen the light of day. Moving on to my number 7, uh, we are going to move into Dumb Money. Now, I was actually really excited to go see that movie, and I was so disappointed when it was just dry. Like, the movie was just kinda nothing. Like, and it was so upsetting to see it because, like, one, again, big Paul Dano fans here on the channel, on the Cinema Regulars channel, but even he couldn't save it. It was and it was even crazier that it was kinda cool to go see something that was like, "Oh, yeah, we lived through that." Like, I remember that. I remember when that happened. And, like, that was really interesting, and a kind of a important pivotal moment in, like, stock trading and stuff like that, but this movie was just there was no heart, no soul. It was just it was just kinda empty, like, didn't really make you feel anything. It was just wasn't there. Plus, Seth Rogen not being Seth Rogen is a downside, so moving on to my number 6 pick, we have, Knights of the Zodiac. Now, I'm going to make a little confession. From my 6 to 1. Almost all of these movies are down here because I fell asleep while watching them because they were so damn boring. So as a blanket statement on that one, we're gonna move on because I honestly cannot tell you a single thing about this movie. I really can't. It was so boring. There was like it was an action movie. It was an action-packed movie that was supposed to have these really cool, like, anime style fights with cool special effects. I cannot remember a single thing. I could not tell you a character's name in this movie. It just wasn't good. It just wasn't there. It was just nothing. I was so bored watching this movie. It was just not. I was not okay. It was not okay. It was just boring, and the plot had nothing to it really, unfortunately. So it was just kind of a nothing movie. Speaking of nothing movies, moving on to my number 5 slot, we will go move on to the movie Marlowe. Now, this again, this movie was just nothing. Unfortunately, like I wish I had more to say to make these more distinctive and more interesting, but it was just a nothing movie. I literally fell asleep for about 20 minutes while watching this movie. Granted, it was a bit of a long day, but this movie, I fell asleep at least twice during this movie. Like 2 separate times during this movie, I fell asleep. Normally, if I fall asleep during a movie, I wake up and I stay up and I'm awake for the rest of it. But because I feel bad, this movie I did not feel bad falling asleep for. It was nothing, and what was even worse was it was like a noir film, like a detective kind of film, and like that should be really interesting and intriguing. It wasn't. It really wasn't. They did not do a good enough job building the suspense or building the intrigue. It just wasn't there. Which is especially sad because Liam Neeson was in this, and I am a Liam Neeson fan, but it was just not good really at all. It just was a soulless movie. Moving on to my number 4 slot, is we are gonna move into Vindicta. Now, this was a movie that we didn't have high hopes for. We just kind of threw it in there at the last minute. It was kind of just a random, oh well, we'll just throw this in there. You know, we needed something. And holy crap, this movie was so shit. For full thoughts, go back and look at our full video on it. But it is in with our like hocus pocus and all that video. But this movie was the only reason why I had fun watching this movie was because we had the entire theater to ourselves so we could shit on it the whole time. That isn't enough to save it from the fact that this was just a terrible, terrible, terrible movie. Like again, it's supposed to be like this like thriller type thing where it's like this dude is trying to is killing people and stuff like that, and it's like kind of like a trying to figure out who did it and all that, and it's like they just kind of threw like they threw Roman and Greek and medieval all in the same room, which I mean Greek and Roman makes sense, but medieval, what? It doesn't make any sense at all. And it was just they couldn't pick a lane at all. They just couldn't. And the if you're a psychotic killer, again, you're going to pick one thing to focus on, not three difference, and just to have that go overlap and like again, it would have been really interesting. It would have been really interesting to see that, but it it just fell flat because like those are all things I'm interested in, but it's annoying that they kept bouncing between each one, and I had to decipher which one I was supposed to be focusing on. It just was kind of a bullshit movie. Moving on to our top three. Uh, we will have the movie Mafia Mama. Now, this was a movie that I thought would be funny to watch. I thought it would be funny to see, you know, like I thought it would be kind of like make fun of it funny, you know, be like very like I knew it was gonna be white woman funny, but I didn't know just to what extent it would be. I thought it would be enough to be at least enjoyable. It wasn't. It wasn't. I felt really, really bad dragging both Mo and Kellen along to go see this movie because it literally looked like I injected a decade into both of them after this movie. Like they were just just like so out of their minds bored by the end of it. And so was I. This movie was just so boring and just cringe beyond belief. And I couldn't believe that I can't believe they somehow made a movie that I expected to be white woman funny even more white woman than it was. And it was so unenjoyable to go watch. Now, moving on to my bottom two, I unfortunately did not fall asleep through either of these. I was awake for all of it, and I hate myself for it. So, without further ado, moving on to my number two pick, we have the egregious Little Mermaid remake, the live action Little Mermaid remake. This this movie was so horribly bad. Like, oh my gosh, I hated it with a passion. As someone who is a big fan of Disney movies, this movie was just it was it was it was it was a slap in the face to the original movie. Not even that. It killed the other one, buried in the backyard, and peed on its corpse. That's what this movie did. Like it was so bad. They they couldn't pick between the visuals, not being able to decide when to make certain things when water physics actually apply to objects, to dyslexic writers, to freaking song, just throwing just throwing in random songs that didn't need to be in the movie, or like changing songs in ways they didn't need to be changed. Fucking Waterboard Wendy being in the movie, or sorry, as we that's what we affectionately call Aquafina around in this household. Uh, but oh my gosh, just it was so egregiously bad, and I hate myself for going to go see it. It's time and money I will never ever get back if I worked for it the rest of my life. So before we move into our top 10, my number 1, I meant to say, my bad. I have some honorable mentions. Uh uh things that didn't quite make the top 10, but I think they still deserve mentioning. Asteroid City. That movie was one of the more boring movies I've seen this year. It just didn't. There just wasn't anything in the movie that made me hate it, so it didn't make my bottom 10. But it was still really boring. Another one to add to the list. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem movie. That movie was again a slap in the face to something that I loved as a child. Like even the Michael Bay ones are better than that. Like the Michael Bay ones weren't terrible, they weren't good, but like this was just terrible. It was horrible, and I felt sad watching it. But moving on to our to my number one worst movie of the year. It is the movie that we didn't even make it all the way through. We walked out before the end of the movie. And that is Joyride. Oh my god, was this movie just so horribly bad. It was bad is the wrong descriptor. This movie was a fucking catastrophe. It was so egregiously unfunny, yet it tried to be funny through the whole movie. Like it tried to be like raunchy and like it overshot raunchy and just made it disgusting. Like there's a fine line between raunchy and disgusting, and this movie completely missed it by a mile. It was so gross, and just constantly throwing things in your face that I didn't want to see. I thought this movie would be kind of like campy funny. Like I still owe Kellen a Spirited because of this movie. Like he has one that will never ever expire until he uses it, because this movie was so egregiously bad. And unfortunately for myself, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I decided to go back and watch the rest of the movie. The part of the movie that we walked out on was they were doing a K-pop music video for Cardi B's WAP. Now, I hate that song with a burning passion. Uh, and we knew it was gonna be in the movie. We knew it was gonna be there, but I thought it was gonna be like a thing where they sing it for a little bit, and then like to prove that they're really K-pop stars because they're trying to smuggle through customs or whatever. And they're like, "Who gets through? K-pop stars." Okay, we'll try and prove that we are. And they sing that, and they sing the song, and I just thought it was gonna be like a quick little thing. No, they performed the entire 3-minute song in a music video, and I was like, "Yep, nope, we can leave now. We can go." And unfortunately, I went back and watched to see how the movie would end. Yeah, I wish I hadn't, because that immediate scene, that scene ends with the skirt of one of the characters in the movies. Her skirt gets ripped off, and she has a tattoo of a demon literally on her vag. And that is one of the most disgusting things I have had to see, and it didn't get any better from there. Like it was just so egregiously horrible. The only thing that this movie got hit right on the head was the racism that Asians have towards each other, and that's about it. Like they said that no less than 20, 30 times throughout this film. And even that, calling that out in its own, trying to be like, haha, it's funny. It's like, no, it's not. You're pointing out an actual problem with your people, but it was so egregiously bad. And I want to find every copy of this movie and burn it. I want to throw it into a fucking volcano. But anyway, that is my bottom 10 movies for this year. Hope y'all found that enjoyable. Uh, don't ever see any of these movies. Please don't. Unless you hate yourself, and then in which case go for it. But until next year, uh that's a wrap. Roll credits.